Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Baldrige Foundation's quarterly webinar, Data Disasters and Delayed Decisions, moving from an explanation culture to an execution culture. Before we get started today, I would like to take a moment to recognize all of our great sponsors and a special thanks to the members of the Mac Baldrige Society who are trustees of the Institute for Performance Excellence. And here's today's agenda. Our presenter today is Seth Davies, Executive Vice President, Competitive Solutions. Following his presentation and questions from the audience, we'll have updates from the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program from Bob Fangmeyer, the Director, Brian Lassiter, the Chair for the Alliance for Performance Excellence, Stephanie Norling, Director of the Communities of Excellence 2026, and then questions from the moderator. A few closing comments. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Seth to get us started. Seth?
Thank you, Al. I appreciate that warm welcome. And I want to welcome everyone that has joined today's webinar on data disasters and delayed decisions. I recognize that we are all busy and we have a lot to do and get accomplished. And I want to thank you for setting aside some time to attend this webinar. I hope the content that I provide to you is valuable and beneficial, and you'll walk away with 2 or 3 practical strategies that you can utilize in your organization. If you're taking notes, I'd like you to write 2 words down because this is really going to be the foundation of my message to you today. The first word is visualize. Visualize. And the second word is utilize. Let me frame out what I mean by those 2 words. So when I talk about visualization, visualizing data, organizations have become experts at visualizing their data. And it manifests itself in terms of dashboards, scrolling signs in organizations, wallpaper they put on their bulletin boards. And really what it comes down to is they don't take the time to look at it. What we at Competitive Solutions believe is we've got to utilize our data. We've got to take the time to look at it, review it, and then actually take action against it. And that's where we become better at using that data to move the business forward. And this is, I read the Harvard Business Review when it comes out. It's a great periodical. And this was a quote that I pulled out of there in a recent article. And I think this really speaks to a lot of organizations, right? We have all this data in our organizations, and there's the belief that we need to review every metric, every piece of data. And what happens is we just become overwhelmed with all the data, and we get frustrated. And eventually, we just push it to the side. We're not visualizing our data for the betterment of our business. And I want to further emphasize that point with this. This is a scorecard. Now, this is page 1 of 3 from a scorecard from an organization that my firm, we started working with earlier this year. This was a scorecard that they brought to our introductory discovery meeting with them. Now, again, this was 3 pages. And at the end of the day, no one could answer that question, are we winning or losing? First off, it's not color-coded, right? So we don't have that visualization immediately out of the gate that helps us utilize that data to move our business forward. So just a little bit about my firm, Competitive Solutions. I manage our office. I'm coming to you from Atlanta, Georgia. I've got colleagues that at our corporate office in Raleigh, North Carolina. We've been in business for 31 years. And we've got 4 components of our business. What I'm going to speak to you today, I'm going to speak to you on the top right around organizational the top left, organizational engagement. How do we engage our teams and our employees around the business? How to create that necessary business acumen so that when we're looking at our data and we're actually going to utilize it to move the business forward. And then I'm also, you'll see some screenshots from the bottom right there from Visuant. Visuant's a business performance software that many of our client companies utilize to help them manage their data. And here are just some of the clients that we're currently working with or have worked with in the past several years. And it's a very diverse group of organizations on there. You've got heavy manufacturing, you've got healthcare, you've got biotech, pharma, you've got some consumer product companies on there, nonprofits. But at the end of the day, all these organizations had the same issue. They struggled with the volume of data that they had and the ability to actually utilize it for strategic advantage. So what my message to you today is, how do we take that data that we have from all our different systems? How do we take it and utilize it to move our business forward, to make data-driven decisions? How do we utilize it to engage our workforce at the right level within the organization? So want to just talk about and see if this resonates with you and your organizations today. A lot of times when it comes down to data and the utilizations, what powers performance is what I call the 3 Ps. It's the proximity of the leader. It's the persuasive personality of the leader giving a motivational speech, or it's the positional authority of the leader that drives that performance. And I'll be the first to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the 3 Ps will get you results in an organization. But the issue that I see and that my firm sees in organizations is that it's not sustainable. Success is going to be short term. And sooner or later, we're going to go back to the old ways, the old habits that we had before. What we've got to create in our organizations is a system, a way of work with that. And I got one more slide I want to share with you to kind of emphasize that point and see if any of these resonate with you. Do you have a hidden factory in your organization? Do you have people in back offices whose job is to generate data, charts, graphs, spreadsheets? I laugh sometimes with organizations when they have their quote data scientists, right, whose sole job is to manufacture and produce reports that honestly many times people don't even take the time to look at. And then that bottom point on there, data is often abstract, right? We've got this data. Someone has requested a report. We look at it. We argue about the data that's on there. We say that's not the right amount of data. It's not the right formula. I even was on a conference call recently where the VP of distribution was arguing about a number on the scorecard, and he got off the call, made a call, and had someone go count the number of trucks that were at the loading dock so he could validate that he was right and that the data that was produced was wrong. What we've got to do is get back to the basics when it comes to data utilization and transition ourselves from just looking at it to actually utilizing the data. So let's talk about what does this look like in a high functioning organization. You're going to see in some of my slides, I'm going to show you what typically a low functioning organization looks like when it comes to data utilization. And then what are the attributes of a high functioning culture that drives thermostatic data? And I'm going to tell you in just a second, I'm going to illustrate my analogy of thermostatic data. But what we believe at Competitive Solutions and what we see in world-class organizations is their data is utilized. They've got a system, a way of work, a process that's governed by the 3 Cs of connectivity, of connecting people to the business. It's that business acumen process where we're educating our people about the business. It's facilitating meaningful conversations and motivating people to want to do a better job. The second C that I'm going to talk about is clarity, around a clear, consistent message about our data, about the business, right? Many times, and ladies and gentlemen, I may, don't take offense if this is your organization today, but most organizations today, the way they communicate is on email, right? Email is not a way to communicate. Email is advertising. It requires someone to review it and respond to it. What I want you to think about, and I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, is we need to get back to the basics of face-to-face communication, whether that's a everyday 5-minute startup meeting or a shift turnover meeting, or once a week, we come together for 30 minutes with a standard meeting agenda focused on the business to talk about business performance. And the third C that I'm going to talk to you about is around consistency and execution. And do we have a consistent process across our organization to review our data and utilize it? Do we have that standard way of work? Do we have the process and the systems in place that we can then go execute on that data? We need to create that management infrastructure. So what do I talk about when I mean thermostatic data? Well, think about this analogy right here. Here's a thermometer, right? Before the webinar started, some of the participants offline were talking about the temperature, right? Here in Atlanta, where I am, it's going to be 95 today. It's going to set a record, and then at 9:04 when fall rolls in, it's going to cool off, and tomorrow it's going to be in the 80s, right? So I know what's going to happen. So the thermometers at our homes are going to go down, right? But what's also going to happen is fall rolls in and it gets colder. We're going to have to go to our thermostat and make adjustments. So think about your data not simply as a thermometer that tells you the temperature, but think about your data as a thermostat. It tells you, are we winning? Are we losing? But then it allows you to make adjustments. That's the key piece I believe that's missing in a lot of organizations is the adjustments they make. You know, sometimes people, a scorecard or a dashboard is visually projected. Here's how we performed the last 7 days, the last week. And that's the end of the conversation, right? There's no action taken against it. We have got to transition to putting in place those systems and processes to take action around that. So here's some things I want you to think about. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the left side on the low functioning culture. What I want to focus on is what are the attributes of an organization that's high functioning when it comes to data. Well, it goes back to what I said earlier. They're educating the workforce. They have a business acumen. When people talk about quality, lost time accidents, safety, over budget, under budget, people know what that means. They've been educated on that. I was recently at an organization and there was a presentation and this person was a frontline supervisor in this organization. And he was briefing to a senior vice president, had flown in from the corporate office in Minneapolis. And one of the metrics that was on that scorecard was MRP. And the senior vice president said, does anyone have any questions? And I gave recognition to this frontline supervisor because he said, for the last 19 months or so, I've been reporting on a monthly basis on MRP, but I don't know what it is. That was a wonderful teaching moment where that senior vice president and his team could start educating the workforce on what are the measurements that are important that help drive the business and help move the business forward. Facilitate, right? Facilitate meaningful conversations. Think about the only thing that you have in common with the people you work with. It's where you work. So let's focus on what we have in common. Let's talk about the business. Let's not be in conflict. Let's focus on what we have in common, the business, and that can facilitate meaningful conversations on what we need to do differently. And then motivate. When our data, when our scorecards, dashboards are visually displayed, and our employees see performance, and they see, hey, we're not hitting our target numbers. If they've got a process in place to change their metrics from a thermometer to a thermostat, that's going to motivate them. They're going to want to do better to do that. Number 3, iterative process, every 90-day thermostatic review. What do I mean by that? Every 90 days, your teams need to set aside time to review their scorecard. They need to look at the metrics. What is that metric telling us? Is it moving our business forward? Are we able to impact that metric with a corrective action? Do we need to change our target numbers? If you've been green for 90 days on that scorecard, you need to change that target. You need to change it so that number will turn red, because what red will do is it'll drive a conversation about how can we get better. It drives that continuous improvement. I've got a client that I work with. One of the things that they celebrate is red on their scorecard because now they know where they can get better. Here's an opportunity where we can get better on our scorecard with that. Another thing that I want you to think about when it comes to your data and your metrics, red's not bad on the scorecard. You know, red is only bad if we do nothing about it. But if we got a red metric on our scorecard and we talk about it and we take corrective actions, that's okay. And on average, a scorecard metrics will go through 6, let me say that again, on average, a scorecard will go through 6 revisions before it is a meaningful scorecard. When I work with organizations, I always ask them, I say, what's your go live date? Meaning we just spent 2 or 3 days building the scorecard. What's the day the scorecard is going to go into place? Because if we don't pick a go live date, when I use the term go live, that's an IT term saying we're turning off the old way of work, we're starting the newer way of work. What's your go live date? We're never going to have a perfect scorecard, but at some point we got to start the process and start the conversations. And knowing that 90 days from now, 180 days from now, we're going to review that scorecard to say, hey, what does it tell us? And then number 5 on there, are we winning? Are we losing? I challenge you to go back to your workforce later today or tomorrow or next week and just ask that question. Just ask people, say, hey, are we winning? Are we losing? And see what the response is. Do they give you a data-driven response? Or do they give you a response that really is just based on how they feel? Perhaps, well, you know, no one's been over to tell us things are bad, so everything must be good, right? Ask them, are we winning? Are we losing? You may be surprised by some of the answers that you get out of it. So want to talk about this data literacy, right? we don't need to have a bunch of data scientists. What we need is we need to align and link our people in the organization so they can then answer that question, are we winning, are we losing? I like to put ownership of a metric within a scorecard, within a specific person on that scorecard, right? Because by doing that, we're not having a culture of spectators, but we're creating a culture of players, right? Of people that know what's going on, right? When we've got data, when we have data ownership, not at the right level, it's going to lead to a culture of explanation, right? Not execution. So when I talk about having a owner of a metric on the scorecard, I want someone that knows exactly what's going on. And here's a screenshot from Visual One, our software I touched on earlier to you. But a couple of things I want to point out to you as you look at this on how you utilize your data. You know, the first thing is it's color coded, right? You can do 2 color, 3 color, 4 color. There's organizations do 5 and 6 colors. And frankly, I think you confuse people when you have that. For me, my view is you're either winning or losing. It's red or green is my view when it comes to scorecards and metrics on there. But within 5 to 7 seconds, I can answer that question. Are we winning? Are we losing? I can look at it to see who's the owner of the metric on that scorecard. So now I know when it comes to right first time, or when it comes to defect reduction, I know the person that knows that metric and can answer that question to me of why is that metric green or why is that metric red? See, I want to create that ownership at the right level within the organization. Those people are the ones that are closest to it. And when we create that ownership at the right level, then we start creating cultures of engagement and accountability in our organization. Engagement and accountability. And that's one of the things that a lot of times is missing in many organizations is engagement and accountability. And I want to transition over to, talking about the business acumen process and transitioning into the accountability, the execution process, right? Accountability is a term that a lot of organizations talk about, and they say we have no accountability or we need to be more accountable. What happens in a lot of organizations, why accountability does not exist, it truly exists, is because there's not a visible tactical representation of accountability, right? Instead of having collective accountability, we have what you see there on the left side, we have selective engagement. What do I mean? And in just a moment, I'm going to share with you a view of engagement and selective engagement. But think about your teams, your organization. More than likely, you have 1 or 2 people that you would classify as your go-to people. When you need something done, those are the people that you go to reach out, right? And pretty soon they're going to get tired, they're going to get frustrated, and they're going to get burned out. Number 2 over there, look at accountability is by what people feel. My definition of accountability, it's not what you feel, it's what you do, okay? And number 3, that the biggest demotivator in teams and in organizations today is the disparity of engagement. And what do I mean by that is if I have a team of 10 people, but 2 of them are the ones that are doing all the work and the other 8 are selectively engaged, I'm going to create a lot of frustration on that within that team. So high functioning cultures, what they do is they transition to accountabilities of organizations and teams of accountability and engagement. Accountability, and in just a moment, I'm going to share with you a tool that'll help you drive that accountability, that'll make it visible, personable, and measurable, okay? And then when we have collective accountability, then we have a truly high-performing team when we've got all 10 people working together for the betterment of the business, right? And what we've got to do as leaders, we really got to focus on changing that narrative of, what have you done to move the business forward within the organization? What have you done with our data to help us to move it forward with that? Because when we start having those conversations, we should start engaging our workforce around that. So what's the tool that I want you to think about utilizing in your organization? It's a tool called an action register, okay? And so an action register is designed to document critical assignments and tasks. And as you look at that, I want you to look at this column here, applies to. You'll see on there metrics. You'll see that scrap. You'll see that overall line efficiency. You'll see that some of those metrics on the scorecard have a corrective action. From a leadership standpoint, what that tells me is that team is looking at their data not as a thermometer, but as a thermostat. They're looking at performance of their metrics. They're discussing why is that metric red and what are we doing about it to move the business forward. They're documenting the critical assignments and tasks. They're assigning responsibility for it. And our belief when you utilize an action register to have true accountability is that responsibility needs to be singular. One person is responsible for that action. Because when we have multiple names on there, guess what happens? It will never get done. There'll be a lot of finger pointing that takes place with that. So when we look at the action register overall, it gives us a very good snapshot of one, the performance of the team, because I can look at the action register to see who's doing what. I can look to see, are they taking action against metrics that are red, that are below target? Are they doing something with it? And then how long has it actually been? Because in a moment, I'm going to share with you how this can become a performance management tool as well with it. But the key that I want you to take away in looking at this screen here is we are taking action against metrics that are below target. The team at that level, whether it's the middle manager, senior level, frontline supervisors, they're taking action against metrics on their scorecard. They're having the right conversations at the right level that is in turn driving that. And just wanted to share with you one other screenshot from Visual. You see these check marks right here? What these check marks indicate, those they have embedded in there corrective actions. So a leader can go hover over any of those check marks to see what's the corrective action associated with that metric. That leader can then look at the team collectively to see what are we doing about it and feel good that that data is being used for strategic advantage with that. So, you know, my execution process, right? Transitioning from a thermometer over to a thermostat. Teams must diagnose and understand why is a metric red and what do we need to do about it. This is where you're really going to start to change your organization, change the culture, and start moving from what I opened up with just visualizing your data to actually utilizing your data. Take it a step further. Have that system, that way of work that says any metric that is red, and I use the term a lot in organizations, non-negotiable. It's not up for discussion. This is how we do it. Any metric on your scorecard that is red, there must be a corresponding corrective action that's linked to that metric itself. That's when we can start moving the business forward with that. So I shared with you earlier when I was talking about selective engagement and collective accountability. And this is something I could spend a lot of time discussing and sharing with you. So I'm very passionate about accountability and engagement because I've seen how it can impact cultures of organizations and improve business results. But very quickly, what I've done here is I've taken my team, hypothetically, and I've gone through my action register, much like I did on my scorecard, where every 90 days I meet with my team and we review our scorecard. We talk about the metrics on there. What I've done is I've taken the action register of my team for the last 90 days, and I've laid out who is doing what. Because from a leadership perspective, I want to see, am I managing by personality? Meaning, and as we look at this, that Frank is obviously my go-to person, right? Every time I need something done, who do I go to? I'm going to Frank, or I'm going to Adam, or I'm going to Gwen or Linda. And look at Linda. Linda's clearly got too much on her plate. So I'm managing by personality here. And here's the data that shows me that. What I want you to think about is managing by process, engaging everyone on your team, right? So now Wendy and Patricia and John, they're engaged. I'm holding them accountable. I'm moving my team from selective engagement to collective accountability with that. This is just a very quick data snapshot. I could spend a lot of time, as I said before, but it also becomes data for performance management conversations, right? I've got the data to have a meaningful conversation with Wendy, with Patricia, with John that says, hey, you're not engaged, you're not participative in our team and in our business, and here's the data that backs it up. So wrapping up my second C, elevating expectations of engagement, right? We've got to change the narrative of not how you feel, but what are you doing? What are you doing to move the business forward within the organization? So my third C is around communication. I believe we have got to get back to basics. And this became even more apparent when the pandemic occurred and people were geographically dislocated, working from home, and we all became familiar with Zoom and team meetings, WebExes. The need for that face-to-face communication, that process in place that says we're going to come together and we are for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we're going to talk about the business, right? And for me, one of your main agenda topics when you come together as your team is your scorecard. How are we performing, right? And let's be honest, people don't enjoy going to meetings because meetings have a bad rap, because many times meetings, we come together, we talk about a lot of things, but there's no action taken as a result of it. I'm going to share with you in just a second, how do we move our meetings to action-driven, outcome-focused meetings with that? So how do we do that? One of the things I think we need to do is we need to talk about with our team, hey, our time together, did it move the business forward? Was it valuable? What can we do better to do that? One of the things I saw with a lot of companies on number one was when you do what we call a meeting audit at the end was during the pandemic, a lot of people said, hey, we need to have our cameras on. We need to see that you're focused and paying attention to what's going on. And you're not sitting there looking at your phone or reading something online. We want to see that. We also have to have that robust pass down, right? What's going on in the business that our people need to know about? Do we have new customers? Do we have new products coming out? Do we have a quality audit coming up? And people say, well, why can't we email that out? Well, let's be honest. Do people read every single email they get? More than likely not. But organizations be conditioned that if it's a passed down item from our leadership team, it's important. And so what do I mean by a passed down item? So I'm talking about here. So here's a sample agenda. Okay. This is a sample agenda that organizations that are utilizing their data for a strategic advantage, this is the things they talk about. Here are the 7 items. This is designed to be about a 30-minute meeting. And I want you to think about it from a tier approach, how we can create that robust rhythm of cadence, right? So think about Monday morning, your senior leadership team meeting first, and they follow this agenda. They look at that action register, and any of the actions that are complete, they're going to brief on. They're going to look at the scorecard. Any metric on that scorecard that is red, they're going to talk about why is it red and what are we going to do about it. And the person, by the way, who's the owner of that metric, as I showed you earlier, they've already reviewed the scorecard. They already know that metric's red. They've already gone out, sought to understand why is that metric red, and brought to the team, hey, that metric was red, and here's what we need to do about it. Powerful discussion can occur in organizations when we understand why the metric's red, what do we need to know about it, do about it. Around the table, it's that engagement piece, right? The ability to have that conversation to say, is there anything else we need to talk about? And ladies and gentlemen, this is where a lot of organizations get sidetracked and the meeting gets off the rails when we start having around the table. But a simple thing that the facilitator can ask is, what's the action here? And maybe that action is that Josh and Seth and Al, maybe they need to come together and have a quick discussion after the meeting. But instead of monopolizing 10 people's time in that meeting, let's take an action and let's come up with what do we got to do differently? What do we got to talk about to solve this issue? Recognition. I'm passionate about recognition because I've seen the power when we recognize our employees. And unfortunately, and I can't speak to the people's organizations on here today, but a lot of organizations are quick to go out and provide feedback when things aren't so good. But what we fail to do is provide recognition when things are great. Let's go out and do that handshake, that pat on the back. And this serves as a mental trigger. And may have been a bad week. We don't need to recognize anybody. But if someone did something good that helped move our business forward, let's talk about it. Let's emphasize it. Let's reinforce the behaviors that we're seeing that's helping our organization. The pass up, pass down. So think about for a minute, if the tier 5 senior leadership team, as that senior leadership team is meeting perhaps at our corporate office, the vice president of quality may say, hey, we've got a quality audit coming up next week. We're going to have auditors on site. Think about the power as a tier 4, tier 3, tier 2. is as they're going through their meeting later on Monday or Tuesday following tier 5, they're following this the same agenda. Think about the power if they said, hey, here's a passed down item from the senior leadership team. There's a quality audit taking place the week of the 26th. Think of the power for pushing that piece of information out to people, right? And let's be honest, what people don't know, they make up. Let's, from leadership perspective, let's move from a position of offense, from a position of defense to offense. Let's get out in front of things. Let's control the rumor mill, the grapevine with that. And then we're going to wrap up the action register review, just reviewing the things we talked about. See, when we have in place this communication cadence, this process, then we can start moving our business forward. We've got to do a better job of engaging and communicating with our employees when it comes to that. So talking about, imperative, we've got to have imperative number 3, compressed and disciplined communication of cadence, right? Here's what's going on in the organization. Here's what we need you people to do. And it's all focused around our data. It's focused around the scorecard that we can answer the question, are we winning? Are we losing? Are we doing what we need to do to move our business forward with that? So I'm starting to wrap up our time together. So the other component that I want you to think about is, do you have the right ideal behaviors, right? Every organization's got values and vision statements, right? How do we translate those over to the ideal behaviors? How do we onboard our team and bring our people up to speed on welcome to our team, this is how we do business. How do we educate them about the data, about the metrics, right? When we have processes in place to educate, facilitate, and motivate, we can then have those meaningful conversations. And for me, and what I want you to think about is we've got to create the systems and the behaviors. Ideal behaviors will give us ideal results, okay? And when we have those systems and behaviors in place that form that foundation, and instead of managing by the 3 Ps that I opened up, we've got the 3 Cs in place that are going to give us that sustainability. So regardless of the leader being present, we've got a standard way of work around our data that's timeless, that says whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, this is how we work. This is what we measure. Here's how we perform. Here's what we do when metrics are below target. Because when we have in place those run the business systems, we're going to win. We're going to become a world-class organization with that. Wrapping up my time with you on data and how do we utilize data to our advantage, right? Every 90 days or so, we got to have that discussion on, do we have the right metrics? Are we moving the business forward? What does that metric tell us? Have we bolted on? Have we added on an execution process? And that's the accountability, the engagement. Remember my analogy of thermometer and thermostat. What's going to be your process to transition your data and your conversations from simply thermometers over to the thermostat, where your teams are making changes, they're making adjustments, they're doing what they need to do to move the business forward? That's the key. And that's one of the things I want you to think about. And a simple spreadsheet with your data, it's not going to help you. You got to have a way of work that makes accountability visible and personal and real, where people can look at what are the actions, what are the things that I need to do the next 7 days, within the next month to help our team be successful. We've got to move from selective engagement to that collective accountability, where everyone on the team is engaged around our data and around our business, and it's not left up to chance. We're not going to our top 1 or 2 people, but we've got everyone involved in the process. We've also established that communication of cadence. We've got to get back to the basics, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to stop advertising everything and start communicating what's important around the business. You will find that when we have a communication process in place, you're going to see a lot of behavioral changes in place in the organization, because now people understand. Now they know what's going on, what's expected of them. What do they need to do to help the organization be successful with that? So let me wrap up by saying high functioning cultures, when it comes to the data, They've got the non-negotiable architecture. They have built the systems and the processes to run the business. And when I talk about building the systems and processes, it's got to start at the senior leadership level. The senior leaders are the ones that have got to say, this is how we're going to do business. They model the behaviors. They create their own scorecard, their metrics first. They practice the accountability. They practice that communication cadence. Then they push it down to the next level, to tier 4, tier 3. They've got to model those behaviors, because where do we look for guidance? We look upward in organizations. We look to our leaders to see what are they doing. And if we're asking people at lower levels to do things we're not doing ourselves, it will never be successful. It won't succeed with that. I know I've just given you a lot of information in a short time, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. Let me wrap up with this. I know you'll be getting a copy of my presentation. Here's a couple other resources that I can offer to you. If you're interested, I'd love to talk with you further, or get you some additional information. If you're interested in learning more about our Visuant software tool as well, I'll be more than happy to have an offline conversation. But I want to thank you, and I'm going to turn it back over to Al and the team. Thank you so much.
Hey, Seth, thank you for such a engaging and fast-paced and informational presentation today. Got some questions here from the audience, and so we'll start off with the first one here, and that is, what are some of the mistakes that organizations make when it comes to metrics and data?
Couple comments on that, Al. One is, what I believe when you have your initial scorecard is about 15 to 18 metrics on a scorecard. If we put 40 metrics on a scorecard, we're going to overwhelm ourselves. So start small, knowing that every 90 days or so, we're going to review it and we're going to make changes to it. The other mistake that I will find is that we come up in our mind a metric that we want to measure, but the data doesn't exist. My rule is, when I'm working with an organization, the data must exist today for it to come up, for it to be on a scorecard. If the data doesn't exist today, we're not going to spend the next 7 days and having someone chase down trying to come up with a formula around that. Other questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple more here already. The next one is, what are the differences between a dashboard and a scorecard from your perspective?
Yeah, so dashboards give us that high level view, right? Dashboards are pretty and they give us that high level view, but the scorecard really tells the story. And so when I work with organizations to design, if they want to go to the dashboard route, I want them to have embedded right behind that the actual scorecard. That scorecard that's got the 15 to 18 metrics, so that they can do that deep dive into to look at, to see how are we actually performing. What are the corrective actions that we need to take on it? Dashboards typically are from the senior leadership level. They like those dashboards. But what we've got to do is make sure that we can drill down deeper into it. So if we need to look at quality, right? And if we need to go 3 layers down to look at a specific quality metric, we've got the ability to do that on our scorecard. Great question.
The next one we have is, how can companies engage their employees around the business?
It goes back to, what I said earlier about, we've got to educate our people about it. We've got to teach them about the business. We've got to teach them how they impact the business and how their daily, weekly, monthly actions are going to impact us. I'm always surprised when I go into organizations and people truly don't understand the impact that they have. And sometimes the frame of reference is, hey, I got paid this week, right? I got paid last month. Let's engage our people by teaching them about the business, because what I have seen is that when people understand what they and their team do, they become motivated. They want to do better. The other thing that I would also offer up is, I think it's important from a leadership perspective that we're transparent and we show our people how are we performing. There's a company that I work with that at the employee entrance where people come in every day, that all the scorecards are visually posted right there, right? So they're there. So when I walk in, I can look to see how did our site do the last 7 days, but I can also look to see how did our team perform and how did other teams perform. And what has happened in that organization is now there's a lot of benchmarking. There's a lot of sharing silos that existed. They no longer exist because everybody wants to do better. And in this particular company, a third of their year-end bonus is tied to performance on the scorecard. So they're motivated in that way. So I think we've got to educate our people about the business and then have the right metrics at the right level. That's the other thing is, we got to have metrics that teams can impact and see that what they're doing is moving that business forward.
Okay, the next one is, there is so much data out there. How do companies know what data is the right data?
Right. I mean, that's one of the challenges that a lot of organizations face is, organizations, one of the companies we're working with right now, they have 3,000 different pieces of data from different systems, right? So how do you distill down all that data to what are the right ones? And it's an exercise that we do is we work with teams to identify, all right, what do you do on a daily, weekly basis that's going to impact it? So let's pull in the different pieces of data, but knowing that, and it goes back to what I said earlier about the 90-day review, every 90 days, we're going to be making changes, right? So every 90 days, we're going to make changes to it. So, scorecard revision 5 or 6, we're going to land on the right ones. My message to you is you got to start somewhere, right? And typically when organizations start, 30% of what they had initially on their scorecard goes away and they replace it. But start small, and then as you become comfortable and proficient with it, then you can grow it out. But my word of caution is, if you try to start big and have 72 metrics on the scorecard, people are going to get frustrated, and that process will fall apart.
We've got a number of other questions. Yeah, we've got a number of other questions here, but we only have time for one more, so I'm going to take 2 of these and combine them here for you.
Okay.
So, somebody asked, what is your recommended reward/recognition system? And it tied to another question pretty close that asked, how do you tie compensation to the scorecard? So I think the whole thing circles around reward, recognition, and compensation, and then tying that to results in the scorecards.
Right. So a couple comments on recognition, and you saw my illustration there about when you're having your weekly meeting, take time to recognize people for something. And when I talk about recognition there, I'm talking about the intangible, the informal, the handshake, the pat on the back. Hey, great job. We know that you were here Friday afternoon late to get this out the door. So that's one type of recognition. The other type that I see with organizations is when it comes to compensation, right, is, quarterly bonuses, year-end bonuses are tied not only to the organizational performance, but to the team performance, right? How many metrics do we have? How many red metrics do we have on our scorecard? Are we taking the right actions with that? There's another company we work with that they've come up with a kind of a checklist. They do an audit of their teams to audit. Are you having your 90-day scorecard reviews? Are you having your weekly meetings? So are you following the non-negotiables that we have in place with that? And I'll be more than happy. That's a conversation to have offline if that person wants to reach out, because I've got some other things that I could share with you, or what other companies have done when it comes to compensation, rewards, and recognition.
Thank you, Seth. And thanks to everybody for those great questions. We didn't get to about 20 of them, but I promise you that we're going to give them to Seth after the presentation here today. And he will be getting back with each and every one of you to answer your questions via email. So Seth, thank you once again. Great job today. Really appreciate all of your insights and all of your thoughts and recognition around this very, very important topic, especially to Baldrige users, because of its implications across not just category 4, but the entire criteria.
Right.
It was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Al.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Bob Fangmeyer, the director of the Baldrige Performance Excellence Program, for an update from the Baldrige program. Bob?
Thank you, Al. I always, excuse me, I always appreciate the opportunity to share updates with the community. So thanks for having me. And I believe I have control of the slides. Let me see if I can move them forward here. Not yet, Jerry. Well, we are kind of tight on time. I don't know, Jerry, should I just have you move them for me? Oh, here we go. All right, thank you. All right, so I've got a few things I want to cover, but as I said, we don't have a whole lot of time. So I'll move through these pretty quickly. But I want to touch on these 5 topics. If we could go ahead to the next slide. All right. So communities of excellence. This is not something new for us. We've been involved in this for quite some time. And I'm going to try not to steal much of Stephanie's update. So I'm going to keep this brief, but you might wonder why we're involved in this. And I would say that the problem we're trying to address is that really the current approach that is generally taken of sort of a scattershot, uncoordinated, and often conflicting set of initiatives that are performed within a community are really not working to really change the quality of life. And so the solution that was envisioned by the folks who started Communities of Excellence was a Baldrige-based systems approach to improve entire communities. And it required that you bring together all community sectors to understand the challenges, identify a common vision, coordinate strategies, resources, and actions that address the root causes and achieve measurable results. And so the exciting news is that community has been authorized as a new Baldrige Award category. And once we have the additional funding from Congress, we can really begin leaning into, the program can really begin leaning into this more directly and more intensely. But we will continue to move forward in partnership with Stephanie and Brian and Al and Communities of Excellence, the Alliance for Performance Excellence, and the Baldrige Foundation. Next slide. So many of you know that the Baldrige framework is revised on every 2-year cycle. And for the past 9 months, we've been actively gathering inputs and suggestions, been holding focus groups. We've been obtaining recommendations, reconciling conflicting inputs, and drafting changes. The emerging themes to this point largely build on existing concepts that are found within the framework and include agility and resilience, with a little bit of a stretch into organizational transformation, building on our diversity, equity, and inclusion that is already in the framework, clarifying innovation and how we expect it to be utilized, enhancing risk management, supplier management, and some additional efforts around the issues related to workforce and retention. And as always, with every revision, we strive to see where we can clarify and simplify the content. Next slide. So I mentioned the issue of retention and workforce retention. This is an issue that has been a huge problem for organizations of all kinds. We've seen this particularly coming out of the pandemic and these issues of sort of the great resignation or the quiet quit or whatever you want to call it. But really the quit rate in the US has been a growing problem for the past 10 years. And so that challenge of recruiting and retaining a high performing workforce is really the problem that we've been invited in to try and help solve. And so our sort of solution set is a Baldrige-based toolkit that provides guidance around the importance of improving the quality of the jobs that one offers and providing organizations tactical strategies, actions, and resource that can help them make a difference. Now, this toolkit is a bit different than a typical Baldrige offering. It is more tactical. It's not intended really to be an assessment per se. The content in the toolkit is not a checklist. We certainly do not expect an organization to attempt to do all of the things that are listed. It's really a menu of options broken down by the 8 different drivers that we've organized these things under. And the hope is that these organizations will recognize that they need to do a better job of understanding what it is their workforce wants and needs, how well they are addressing those issues of what they want and need, and that they will work to enhance their ability to address those wants and needs. Now, the benefit for all of us, I think, is that obviously by increasing their awareness of Baldrige, we create opportunity for the national program, the alliance programs, et cetera, to to guide the organization's efforts to do those things, to assess their current state, prioritize the areas of need, and help them decide on what actions to take and how to measure the impact. And I really see it as an opportunity to sort of get them on the path towards performance excellence. Next slide. The Advanced Manufacturing Assessment here has really been a very fruitful collaboration between the Baldrige Program, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, the Alliance programs, and a couple of MEP centers. And the problem that we're trying to address here is that small and medium-sized manufacturers would really benefit from better adoption of what are known as advanced manufacturing technologies, or you can think of the Industry 4.0, those sorts of things. And that would help them improve their efficiency, their effectiveness, their agility and resilience. But they really don't understand what they need to do and how to do it. And so in this case, the solution is a Baldrige-based assessment, which helps them understand and improve their preparedness for and their opportunities to adopt those advanced manufacturing technology solutions. So the benefits out of this one is clearly to these organizations. It's also a benefit to the MEP centers as business development. It's advantageous to Baldrige in general in terms of increased awareness. And for Alliance programs, I think this is also a business development opportunity, as well as the opportunity to enhance their collaborations with various MEP centers in their regions. I'll share that I had attended the MEP National Network meeting earlier this week. I gave an overview of Baldrige, how Baldrige can help MEP centers and their clients. And I emphasized the opportunities to partner with Alliance programs in their learning of and their provision of any Baldrige-based tools and offerings. So that would include this assessment, the job quality toolkit I just mentioned, the various Are We Making Progress surveys, et cetera. So we now have a very strong relationship between Baldrige and MEP at the national level, and we're going to strive to help enhance the partnership and the relationship between the centers and the Alliance programs down at the state and regional level. Next slide, please. Okay, the external program review. This is an effort to ensure that the Baldrige program is in its best position and perhaps reimagined in a sense to best enable us to accomplish our mission and our purpose and really enhance the performance of our nation and of organizations of all kinds. The expectation is that this external review will build on the work that's been done by the program and the recommendations that have come out of our own assessments in recent years, build on changes that we've made to the award process, et cetera. Our goal is to obtain input on potential changes to the award process by December, and then begin to work to implement those changes for 2023. Overall program recommendations will be due by the end of February. And really, I do think this is an opportunity for us to engage deeper with Commerce and the White House, perhaps, and Congress, in that as they are a important participant in this effort, they will have buy-in to the outcome and a little bit of ownership over the success going forward. So we look forward to this. We think it's a great opportunity to really enhance support for and our ability to serve organizations of all kinds. And with that, I think I'm done, and I will turn it over to whoever's next.
I think that's me. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Al. Thank you all for sticking around. I see quite a few folks from Minnesota, my home state. Good to see you all as well. I'm Brian Lassiter, the chair of the Alliance for Performance Excellence, which is the national network of Baldrige-based programs and other supportive members. We'll do this fairly quickly in the interest of time. Jerry, next slide. For those of you that are not as familiar with who the Alliance is, we're a 17-year-old nonprofit, as I mentioned, the network of Baldrige-based programs and a few other supporting members. Our mission is really to advance this concept of performance excellence throughout the nation and beyond. We'll go to the next slide. Quite the footprint. You can see we have 29 state and regional programs and sector-based programs serving all 50 states. 3 are national or international in scope, and 4 other members who support the mission. Collectively, our programs receive about 700 Baldrige applications a year, at least last year, which is down from our historical average given COVID. We trained about 1,200 examiners, hosted 11 conferences. Collectively, we have 37 paid staff and hundreds of volunteers through our programs with a combined budget of about $9 million. So our footprint's fairly large. Our scale's pretty meaningful, pretty impressive when you consider all of our members as a group. You can find your local program at baldrigealliance.org if you want to start your journey to excellence or maybe accelerate it. Next slide. There's a lot of words on this page. You'll get the slides afterwards, but I'll call your attention to the left column, the priorities the Alliance has been following this year, for a quick update on them. There are 4. The first one is we're taking a little bit of our own medicine, completing our own organization profile. It's just about finished. It's going to help us with better alignment and decision-making throughout the Alliance and improve our role within the enterprise. Second initiative is we're in the process of redesigning 1 or 2 key Alliance processes. Third one is we hired a marketing specialist earlier this year who's really been elevating our collateral material and our public messaging. Some of you are probably receiving the elements of our marketing campaign this month. About every 2 or 3 days, we send out a blast to all of our networks talking about performance excellence in different ways, some tips and so forth, hopefully giving some ideas on how to drive and sustain excellence. We're also collecting data across the United States from the program's revised Are We Making Progress survey. So if you haven't seen that, contact your local program and you can fill it out. It just takes a few minutes. And hopefully when we aggregate all the results, we'll have a nice set of benchmarking data to see how your organization compares to others. And the last initiative is we're working with our partners in the Baldrige program and the foundation to redefine our own role within the enterprise, especially in light of the review that Bob just described. Last slide. If you haven't already registered, I encourage you to consider the Baldrige Fall Conference. It's October 19th and 20th in sunny San Diego, which I understand is 90 degrees today, a little unusual. It's a great event, and we're thrilled to have it back in person after a couple of years of online only. The early bird is extended through tomorrow. It's great learning, great networking, great energy. So check out the program. It's a really strong collection of speakers, both national winners and state level winners, sharing their insights and best practices for improving performance. So I hope I gave just enough time for Stephanie and Al to wrap it up.
Hi, everyone. Thanks yet again for sticking around. I am Stephanie Norling from Communities of Excellence 2026. If you go to the next slide, please. I have a few things here I want to just share with you. As Bob had mentioned as well, we are very thrilled to announce that community is now the 7th category of the National Baldrige Quality Award. And I just want to thank everyone involved, including the foundation, Al Faber, Bob and the Baldrige program and all of his staff and all of our amazing faculty and supporters and examiners and mentors and community leaders. It really was a group effort. Over here, you see some new statements that we've developed as we're looking at a new, rather ambitious and bold 5-year strategic plan. And significant to that is our envisioned future here, that communities that adopt the Baldrige-based framework are recognized as the top performing in the nation and are catalysts to again lead our country in the world in educational attainment, economic prosperity, health and wellness, and quality of life. And on the right here, you can see our strategic areas of concentration. First is to actively support and energize high-performing Baldrige enterprise. Second is to be able to increase our ability and our capacity to support communities, and I'll show you in just a second what that looks like, and to become the center for community performance excellence resources and knowledge. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We have many programs that are currently underway, in addition to some new and expanding programs that we're developing. The first one and most significant is our National Learning Collaborative. We began this 5 years ago, and it continues to be hugely successful as a way to provide access to how to use the Communities of Excellence framework to communities across the country, to enable these communities to learn and share with and from each other, and to help us understand what those best practices are in community performance and what communities are really doing so that we can showcase that. As you see here, this is our current set of communities involved. Very happy to announce that we have 7 new communities joining us next year. And so our map here is getting a little busy, and we might have to change this for next year, but just the diversity of the communities all across the country is really exciting to see. And we are looking forward to another exciting year. In addition, we are coming out with a new version of the Communities of Excellence framework. This will be in partnership with the Baldrige program. Expect that next summer. We also have our own assessment and recognition program. And right now we have 15 communities that have applied in the current year. And right now there's about approximately 70 examiners that are reviewing those and providing feedback reports to them that they'll receive in October. So we really enjoy this. I want to thank our volunteers as well as the Alliance programs that partner with us to help us lead these assessments. Some new programs that we have and others we're continuing. This is a spring course, Preparing Your Community Excellence Journey. We also have the fall conference. So we are alongside the Baldrige Fall Conference, hosting our Communities of Excellence Conference and in San Diego, which is my hometown. And there are opportunities to participate in the Communities of Excellence Conference. We have some special sessions just for general participants to introduce you to the framework, as well as participate with our current communities and learn from them and hear about some of the amazing work they're doing. So you can find that information on our website. And finally, we're working on a lot of new and exciting tools and different ways that we're supporting communities. I think we've got a lot of kind of innovative new programs that we're developing in the next few years, one of which is focused on measurement and helping our communities develop community scorecards, as well as the supporting tools that go with those scorecards, so data literacy trainings and other types of metric education, basically, that we're really excited to be sharing with our communities. In addition to that, we're really working on focusing on leadership, and the other key components that we've learned over these last few years are really critical to community performance excellence. So that is all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Stephanie, thank you for such a exciting update, and congratulations to you and your entire team with community becoming the 7th category of Baldrige Awards. Bob and Brian, thank you for your updates as well. Just as a reminder to everybody, the Institute for Performance Excellence has numerous training and professional development certification opportunities that are offered online and at your own pace. This month, we are showcasing 2 of our most popular courses, Supply Chain Management and the Lean Healthcare Professional. Our next Mastering Strategy in Healthcare Bootcamp, which is presented along with LBL Strategies and the George Washington University, will be offered this fall from 17 to 28 October. Please visit the Institute website for more information and to register. Thanks to everyone for attending today. As a reminder, a recorded version of today's presentation and the slides will be available on the Foundation's website early next week. And once again, thanks to all of our sponsors, especially members of the Mac Baldrige Society, who are the trustees of the Institute for Performance Excellence. It is their generous support that makes presentations like today's possible. Please be safe, everyone, and have a great day.